On February 28, 2025, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth directed U.S. Cyber Command or CYBERCOM to halt all planning and operations targeting Russia, including both defensive and offensive cyber activities. This decision represents a major shift in the Department of Defense's approach to cyber threats and aligns with the current administration's diplomatic efforts to normalize relations with Moscow. The policy shift is further reflected in the exclusion of Russia from key cybersecurity discussions at both the domestic and international levels. During a United Nations Working Group meeting, U.S. officials explicitly addressed threats from China and Iran, but omitted any reference to Russian cyber aggression. Similarly, a recent memo from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, outlined new cybersecurity priorities focusing on China and the defense of U.S. systems while making no mention of Russia. This shift raises significant concerns regarding the long-term security of U.S. networks, critical infrastructure, and national security interests. Despite these policy changes, Russia remains an active cyber threat, continuing its campaigns of espionage, infrastructure attacks, and influence operations. The decision to halt CYBERCOM's actions against Russia removes a key deterrent against these activities and fundamentally weakens the United States' ability to counter one of its most persistent cyber adversaries. By analyzing this shift through the lens of cyber operations, intelligence coordination, and critical infrastructure defense, it becomes evident that this policy not only exposes U.S. vulnerabilities, but also creates strategic imbalances that Russia can exploit. CYBERCOM plays a critical role in the broader United States cyber defense ecosystem, particularly in defending against Russian cyber threats. Its functions include offensive cyber operations that disrupt Russian hacking groups, defensive measures that protect United States military networks, and coordination with domestic agencies and international allies to counter cyber threats. The decision to halt operations against Russia disrupts these essential activities in three major areas: intelligence gathering and counter-espionage protection of United States critical infrastructure, and efforts to combat Russian disinformation and election interference. Russian state-backed hackers have consistently targeted United States government agencies, military networks, and private sector organizations to conduct cyber espionage. Groups such as APT-29, also known as Cozy Bear, linked to Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, the SVR, have been responsible for high-profile cyber intrusions, including the SolarWinds breach that compromised multiple federal agencies. CYBERCOM has played a pivotal role in disrupting these efforts by conducting offensive cyber operations that dismantle Russian command and control infrastructure and neutralize Russian cyber assets before they can conduct further intrusions. Additionally, CYBERCOM works closely with the NSA's Cybersecurity Directorate and the FBI's Cyber Division to share intelligence on Russian cyber tactics, techniques, and procedures, ensuring that threats are detected and mitigated before they reach U.S. systems. With the cessation of CYBERCOM's operations against Russia, the ability to preemptively disrupt Russian cyber espionage is effectively eliminated. Without military-led cyber operations, U.S. intelligence agencies will have to rely solely on passive defensive measures, significantly increasing the likelihood of Russian penetration into sensitive networks. The absence of proactive engagement also removes an important deterrent. Russian cyber operatives will no longer face the risk of immediate retaliation, making the U.S. an easier target for espionage campaigns. Russian cyber actors have repeatedly demonstrated their willingness and capability to target U.S. critical infrastructure, including energy grids, pipelines, and financial systems. The 2021 Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, attributed to Russian-affiliated cybercriminals, disrupted fuel supplies across the East Coast, highlighting the vulnerabilities of U.S. infrastructure to cyber attacks. More recently, Russian state-sponsored hackers have been identified within U.S. energy networks, probing for potential vulnerabilities that could be exploited in future conflicts. CYBERCOM has played a key role in countering these threats by actively engaging Russian cyber actors before they can carry out successful attacks. The decision to suspend CYBERCOM's focus on Russia removes a critical layer of defense against these attacks. While agencies like CISA and the Department of Energy provide cybersecurity guidance and risk mitigation strategies, they lack the offensive capabilities that CYBERCOM brings to cyber defense operations. Without these proactive measures, Russian hackers will have more freedom to operate, increasing the risk of disruptive cyber attacks on power grids, water treatment facilities, and other essential services. The removal of CYBERCOM from these operations also undermines coordinated efforts between civilian agencies and the military, further weakening the overall resilience of U.S. infrastructure. Beyond direct cyber intrusions, Russia has leveraged cyber capabilities to conduct influence operations aimed at undermining U.S. political stability and democratic processes. Russian disinformation campaigns have been a persistent issue, particularly in election cycles, where state-sponsored actors manipulate social media platforms to spread false narratives and sow division. CYBERCOM has been a key player in countering these activities, deploying hunt-forward teams to foreign networks to disrupt Russian disinformation operations before they can reach U.S. audiences. By working alongside the State Department's Global Engagement Center and CISA's Counter-Disinformation Unit, CYBERCOM has helped mitigate the impact of Russian influence campaigns. By halting CYBERCOM's operations targeting Russia, the U.S. loses a critical tool in combating Russian information warfare. The absence of preemptive cyber operations allows Russian disinformation networks to operate with fewer obstacles, increasing the spread of propaganda and foreign influence in U.S. elections and public discourse. Additionally, the exclusion of Russia from cybersecurity discussions at the State Department level signals a broader shift in policy, potentially leading to a reduction in diplomatic pressure against Russian cyber aggression. This approach risks emboldening Russian efforts to manipulate political narratives both in the U.S. and among its allies. The full impact of the decision to halt CYBERCOM's operations against Russia remains uncertain, as the Department of Defense has not provided details regarding the duration or specific scope of the directive. However, the immediate consequences are clear. A weakened U.S. cyber posture, increased vulnerability to Russian cyber operations, and a loss of strategic deterrence in cyberspace. By shifting focus away from Russia while cyber aggression persists, the administration creates a security gap that Russia is likely to exploit. The removal of offensive cyber operations does not neutralize the threat. Rather, it grants adversaries greater freedom to operate without consequence. This policy shift also has broader implications for international security. CYBERCOM has played a central role in coordinating cyber defense efforts with NATO and allied nations, many of which continue to face Russian cyber threats. A reduction in CYBERCOM's role weakens collective cyber defense efforts and signals a retreat from the proactive cyber engagement strategy that has been a cornerstone of U.S. national security. Furthermore, it risks creating a precedent where adversaries perceive cyber aggression as a viable tool for achieving strategic objectives, knowing that the U.S. may be unwilling to respond forcefully. The decision to halt CYBERCOM's operations against Russia represents a fundamental breakdown in U.S. cyber strategy, one that carries significant risks for national security, critical infrastructure, and democratic stability. While diplomatic engagement with Russia may serve broader foreign policy goals, it should not come at the cost of cybersecurity preparedness. The continued prioritization of Russian cyber threats is essential to maintaining the integrity of U.S. networks and institutions, and any long-term policy changes in this domain must be carefully evaluated to ensure they do not compromise national security interests.